Hello runners, this is GV Ganesh coming to all of you on 14th May 2021, one day before the final State of the Union of a wonderful season 5 we all had. First of all, I would like to congratulate each one of you for the wonderful journey of 16 weeks of training we all had and the culmination of that on the marathon day, whether you ran a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon or a full marathon. This would be the last podcast of the season, and I will be your host, my first time ever as a podcast host. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm sure you're also used to seeing Bala hosting the podcast, and he does such a wonderful job of that. Yesterday, actually, Bala called me and he said that he has scheduled this final podcast and he is pulled into something that he's not able to cancel. And he requested me to see whether I can step in and do that. He also mentioned that he found two guests who have been with Runners High with Bala for 5 full seasons, but never had the opportunity to be a guest in any of the podcasts over the past 5 seasons. That seemed amazing to me. So I jumped on the opportunity, and here we are getting started started on the last podcast of the season. Without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce these guests and get on with the discussion. Okay, here is my first guest, friends. And hey, Bala, I didn't know that you are going to be a first guest for us today.
Thank you, GV. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to be on the other side. Feels nice and surreal and very relaxing,
Sure, it's amazing, Bala. I think I was just doing the video for the SOU, which is tomorrow, and it's unbelievable as to how far we have come in the season. Again, you have done this for 5 seasons. This is just my second season, but it's a fabulous journey, and I'm sure each one of us have a story to tell, which we will hear tomorrow, hopefully.
Absolutely, I cannot wait. And even though maybe we would be releasing this on Sunday, I think by the time you all hear this, I'm sure we'd have already completed our SOU. I cannot wait. I always have the greatest feeling of just listening to people. For me, it's very therapeutic to hear people, even if it is only for a few seconds. I just sit back and just listen to people. It feels so warm and fuzzy. So I cannot wait for the high that I'll feel tomorrow evening.
Absolutely, Bala. That explains why you spend so much time with each one of us and why people gravitate towards you as well, right? So it's a fascinating journey, and I'm glad to be a part of that. But again, just to kind of move forward with this conversation, right? So what I just wanted to kind of maybe a sense of a topic, I just want to give you a view, right? I know I'm catching you pretty cold here without much of a background. That's why I wanted it to be, so that we can see the real Bala, right? But the intent is, look, you haven't, not only we are doing this, but RSWB or Runners High with Bala has evolved over the last 5 seasons or the last 2.5 years, right? Started with about 10 kids, 20 kids, to now this season we have about 140 odd runners finishing their run, which is fascinating. But I think what has stayed constant, I believe, right, from what I've seen your first SOU videos, is the mission. The mission, as I understand, is to build a tight network of 1,000 good human beings.
Yeah.
And running happens to be a medium to achieve that.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a fascinating objective, which many of us believe in, who are a part of this and gravitate towards, right? And we are benefiting from this already, right? The amazing group that we have and what the encouragement we all get, right? So as I kind of thought a bit about that, right, I kind of came up with a few characteristics which might define some of those people, or some common characteristics across many people who exhibit those good human beings. And in this discussion, I just wanted to highlight a few of those, right, as for what I saw. Would love to hear your perspective on those characteristics, but also more importantly, I want this to be a discussion where people get to know the real Bala better, right? In terms of how you either have that, don't have those characteristics, or found a way to build that. I think that journey of yours, bringing in some of your personal examples of success and maybe not so great days that you had through that journey, would be great to kind of understand, Bala.
No, absolutely, GV. Thanks for it's really a very nicely set up agenda. And yes, I think I always thought that maybe we should start defining what great human beings look like, what it should be, and offering my thoughts on that. Yes, that'd be amazing. Thanks for that opportunity.
Okay, wonderful. Let's get right into it. Okay. See, one of the things Deepa and I actually watched the first interim SOU you did with the kids, and it's just amazing. We are so struck by the energy and enthusiasm of everybody in that room, right? And the SOU happened in the room, right? That's fascinating. So I know you. You've always been big on leadership, right? Even the smallest initiative taken by somebody, you see that leadership characteristic in people and encourage that. It's fascinating. And of course, many people have an opportunity to do it and think that it's somebody else has to start and we follow, right? So the fundamental question is leadership is a trait which is born, people are born with, or do you think that's something that can be cultivated? Yeah. What's your view on that? And some perspective will be great.
Yeah, no, what a fascinating question. So as I'm trying to answer this question, maybe I should start with what I mean by, or what I understand by leadership. In that way, then it'll be easier for me to answer your question. So, I see leadership comes in like about 2 or 3 different categories of leadership, as I understand it. So there is this one, which is like leading from the front kind of a leadership, where you are sort of like the army general, where you are like, driving the set of soldiers behind you and telling where to go, how to go, what to do, and everything is done from and all the soldiers look up to that person as just inspiring, powerful character that just put all their trust on that person and just go and execute it, because you know that the leader is going to think for the best of the outcome of the team, for the individuals, as well as everything. So that's one form of leadership. I mean, by the way, when I say this, I'm not saying that one is better or another. I'm just saying that as I understand, leadership falls in these kind of categories. Then there's another form of leadership which we call it as the leading from the back, where like it's like a shepherd. You are a shepherd, you are seeing the goats or the sheep just going in front of you. You're allowing all the latitude, all the direction for the sheep to go in different directions in their own pace and all that. What you are just focused on is the larger team is going in the right direction, but they have all the freedom to do, in between, they can do wherever you want, but you're looking at the macro direction, whether it's going or not. And everybody in the sheep know that there is a shepherd behind me, that tomorrow a lion or a wolf comes in, that person is going to protect me. So the sheep are also feels good. And they know that there is a leader who will take care of me when there is an emergency. But when the things are all normal, I am just being my own creative self. I'm doing my own self. And the shepherd is just focused on the larger sort of flow of things. And that's one form of leadership. I know Meg Whitman of eBay used to be like that, it seems like. She used to just let go of everybody to do what they have. And she was considered an amazing leader. And I read a book on that. Like, she's a shepherd leader, like leading from the back. And so that's one form of leadership. Then there is another form of the leadership, which I also identify myself with, is that leading from the middle. So the leading from the middle kind of trait is where you are literally along with the sheep. You are one of the sheep and you're just moving along with the group. But you're also constantly sort of, looking for opportunities to either lead from the back or lead from the front, depending upon the circumstances that particular group of sheep needs at that time. So there will be a time when, you just step back and allow others to lead you, and you just enjoy that. Like, great example would be the team captains, how you're leading the yesterday's final SOU. You guys did, the captains did everything. I was just like, giving some suggestions and a high level framework, and then the captains did everything. And I learned so much. They did so much better than what I could have done. But that was also, my job was to just set the overall parameter, what is okay, what is not kosher. And that was it. So I was able to do that. Then there were times when, it's not about asking for permission. It is like, what I am saying, that's what we need to do. And that's what we will do. And we lead from the front. But most of the times I'm along with the sheep, going past part of the group. So I believe that is a very, something that has helped me a lot from a leadership, leading from the middle standpoint. So now, so that is what I define as my type of leadership style, which is the catalyst leader. where you are part of the equation, but you're part of the reaction, but you are never consumed in the reaction. But because of your presence, the reaction is faster and more powerful and all that, or the outcome is better. So that's the kind of catalyst leadership that I would like to be. So being a catalyst means you need to be part of the reaction, or in other words, you have to be in the middle of the group, middle of the sheep. So that's how I define. So the reason I said that all that is that to do that, there is a certain element that it is inborn in my mind, and there are certain elements that can be completely cultivated. The ones that are inborn is that you need to be supremely comfortable with different types of people, because when you are part of the group inside the middle, you're not going to have a homogeneous set of people, ideas, and a set of people. So you got to make yourself malleable so that every sheep around you feels comfortable with you. And that I believe is a little bit of a innate trait. It's like not everyone can just suddenly become malleable with all kinds of characters. So that I feel is a little bit of a certain characteristic trait will be inborn, I guess. That helps. The one that develops, the one where you can develop on that thing is that you should have a certain positive framework, positive mental attitude, as they call it, right? When you are in the middle, you should be able to always provide a beacon of positive energy for the sheep around you to sort of treat you as a leader when there is an emergency, and when they say that, okay, why don't you go to the front and we'll just follow you. For that pedestal to happen, you need to be a beacon of hope, a beacon of positivity. Then only the sheep will listen to you when you are beginning to go in the front. Likewise, when you are in the back, when you are completely, you should have the ability to let things go. You should be able to be comfortable with ambiguity. Not everything needs to be exactly what you would like it to be, and those are things that can be cultivated. Some people say, what, I'm a perfectionist. For me, that perfectionist word is a very dangerous word. Right. If you're a perfectionist, then you cannot be a good leader, because perfectionist means you're an individual contributor, because you are trying to do everything the best way you want to do. But when you're a leader, you got to be comfortable with incompleteness, ambiguity. Only 80% of what you wanted was achieved. All those things need to be, incompleteness need to be part of that, and that can be cultivated. Initially when I was an individual contributor, I wanted to do everything my way and the best way. Then when I became a manager of just 2 people, I realized those 2 people are not exactly following my order, sort of my way of doing things. So initially I was getting irritated. Then I realized, no, man, me getting irritated is not going to be enough. They are doing something and I can actually learn from them. So that is something you can cultivate. So net, what I'm trying to say is my style of leadership has a bit of innate nature of being comfortable with different types of people, and having a little bit of a positive flow of being a positive beacon of hope, positive beacon of energy is needed if you want to lead from the middle. And then things that you can cultivate is not being a perfectionist, being comfortable with ambiguity, being comfortable with incompleteness, and doing 80% and feeling great about it, as opposed to saying, why did I miss the 20%? If you are able to, those things, if you cultivate it, I feel that my brand of leadership can be achieved.
Fascinating, Bala. Amazing answer, right? I mean, in terms of, and I think the struggle, like the examples that you gave, right? So typically, like, again, I'm just assuming, right? People lead from the front or from the back, depending on their personality, right? Being able to be in the middle and straddle this based on the situation, right? While everybody can aspire to, but that's a unique skill of being able to straddle, right? Depending on the situation as well, beyond the people skill that you talked about, right? Because the point is, once you are in the middle, you are able to appreciate and empathize with the situation better, right? Rather than if you are only in the front or only in the back, right? That's a big difference in terms of leadership and the sheep or the people around you buying into what you believe, right? So I think that's the harder one, I believe, in terms of a leadership style. And it's fascinating to see that that's something that you have chosen to gravitate towards and build further on your abilities.
It's a harder one. Absolutely agree. Only because sometimes you got to control your instincts and urges to sort of, let's say when you want to do a certain way, and then the people around want to do something completely different way, you got to control your instinct and say that, for the larger vision, as you said, creating connect. I'm just taking runners high as an example now for putting this point across. If our mission was to connect 1,000 amazing human beings and have a network of that, that mission is not going to get impacted just because, let us say, a design of an interim state of the union is not exactly what I was thinking. You know what I mean? I can always say it's okay. That's something that's not a big deal, kind of. So
correct. I think having that perspective to zoom out and zoom in based on the situation, I think that's a very important characteristic to have, right? So
that's correct.
No, that's great, wonderful. So let me pick another kind of a characteristic, which again I contemplate and struggle with also a lot, right? Is about the ability to get things done and versus having a lot of ideas, right? I mean, these are not mutually exclusive, right? But we've seen in all our careers, many people who have amazing ideas, but are not able to get things done, right? Whereas others, right, are very good at doing that, right? In terms of just execution, as people say, call it, right? So, again, this is something I'm sure can be cultivated as well. But in your experience, what are some things that people have driven people to gravitate towards being good at execution? And what have they done differently in terms of examples of maybe not being good to start with and something they've chosen to acquire that skill really well? It'll be good to kind of understand that.
Yeah. See, it's a great question. It's not as if I can't claim that I'm really good at getting things done or something. It's just putting my point of view. I just want to be put that disclaimer there. It is my assessment that if you take a set of people, right, folks, you would have seen there are some folks who, as you rightly said, who are just absolutely brilliant in thinking through all the things that needs to be thought through for an idea to be executed. They are even creating an idea for that matter. They think of beautiful things, and you need those people in the team. Without them, you will just become a frivolous and a shallow sort of project, right? You need someone who can think through the risks, the rewards, the risk, the options that are available, which option needs what type of resources, strategy, tactics, all the things. Someone has to think deeply for that, and you need that person. Now, your question was, if you think about it, if your question was, how do you execute, right? Now, the execution comes in my mind in a couple of phases, right? The initial phase is about going from 0 to 10. The second phase is going from 10 to say 50. And the third phase is the scaling phase, which is 50 to 100. Or if I have to tell it in terms of, my strategy teacher in business school, you had a beautiful analogy that stuck in my mind. It is like, if you want to become a 5-star, like a owner of a 5-star hotel and you're starting from scratch, you may be starting off with a roadside stall. For the first stop, you'll be starting off with a roadside stall, putting together an amazing, whatever Indian dish, for instance. That has become a really successful, and then you go and create a lovely restaurant. Okay, and then that became really successful, and then you created a fantastic 5-star hotel. Like, so 3 phases of this thing. Now, the skill sets and the attitude required to be successful in that roadside stall is very different from the skill sets and the attitude required to be successful in the 5-star in the restaurant, and then it's completely different from the 5-star hotel. Now, why I'm saying this framework is, when you want to start executing, everyone has those skill sets for all those 3. But you got to start focusing on which are the skill sets that I need to be using for creating and being successful in that roadside stall first. Without the roadside stall, your restaurant is not happening. Without the restaurant, the 5-star hotel is not happening. Most people who cannot execute, or who are always worried about execution, or folks who are applying the framework of 5-star hotels into the roadside stall situation. At the minute when they do that, they have more reasons for not doing something than reasons for doing something. So let me now bring it to a running thing, for instance. Like, the running thing started because of, as I had mentioned, or just that one Sonia said, hey, why don't you teach my kids, right? That was the only thing that started. Now, in that first phase, you need to have passion. If you don't have passion for an idea, then your idea is not going anywhere. Because for the first phase, nobody's going to help you. Nobody is going, because nobody knows what it is to help, first of all. You need to help yourself so that others can begin to help you. You need to start helping yourself first. for you to help yourself, you need to have passion. Without passion, you cannot execute on anything. The first sort of roadside stall phase, right? So in the case of running, for instance, it gave me immense satisfaction to apply my craft to a bunch of kids who were more often than not watching video games, and generally, like, whenever we used to have parties, we used to play poker, and these guys used to go and watch TV and movies and that type of stuff. That's it. So it felt like maybe something I can do, a challenging thing that I can do and change their trajectory of their life. That was my passion. I truly believed I can change the trajectory of their life by making them do such a hard thing that after that, anything that is hard, they will not worry about hardness as the reason for not trying something, because they know how to conquer hardness. That was the idea behind that. So running, as you say, was just a path to that goal of making them a true impact in their life. So that was my passion at that time, and that's why it transferred to the mission, which is connecting amazing human beings. It had nothing to do with the running. Running was just a thought. So when I started this, the skill set that I had was telling a story to the kids. So I was telling them the Born to Run story. That was the first lesson to the kids. I wanted to see whether those guys will get inspired. And kids being kids, they just love stories. And they love stories, they inspired. And then first run, I saw that these guys just took it upon themselves to become the Tara Umra tribe that I had impressed on them, that you all are born to run. You all can run 100 miles. You are born to run. That was the idea behind that story that I had told them. And when they did that, I saw the glow in the parents' face. I didn't realize that the parents are going to be so excited to see that kid running just 1 mile. Then I knew something was happening here. So what I mean by that is the execution mode. I wasn't thinking about, who is going to help me? I have to run an organization here. How can I spend many, many hours of doing this? All those questions never even came into my existence. All my focus was that 6 or 7 kids that I had, I want to change the trajectory of their life in my own small way, which selfishly, because it gave me the satisfaction. That was the only thing. So I'm saying the lesson to your question here is, how do you execute is, one, you need to be passionate about what you want to do. Number one. Number two, you need to identify that the skill sets that are required for being very big is very different from the skill sets that are required for winning very small. So just pick out those parts of your repertoire, those part of a repertoire of skills. Pick up just those straws that are going to be useful for the small. Dump all the remaining. Just dump remaining on them. Just use that to be successful in a small, like that roadside stall first. Make a good roadside stall successful. Because when it becomes successful, automatically people begin to realize how they can help you. Because now they know what a roadside stall looks like. Now they can say, that is exactly what happened. When I was struggling with the first season one, after season one, suddenly 20 kids came. I'm like, okay, I wasn't like at scale at all for 20 kids. Then of course, Madhavi and Renu just jumped in and said, what, don't worry, I'll take care of the admissions or whatever. It's not as if like, I didn't even know what needed to happen, but they had the skills to take it from sort of the roadside stall to a restaurant. Now I feel we are at the restaurant place. And I know that this has inspired many folks to say that, what, let's take it to the 5-star hotel. So that's why like somebody like you, if you're Annie, I'm saying that, what, let me do the coach course, because I know that is the bottleneck right now. I think one coach is not possible. We need to have 5 or 6 coaches if you have to take it to the 1,000 thing, and they are helping. All this is falling into place. And trust me, if you had asked me in that first phase, I have no idea how to go and scale this. All I was thinking of is my passion, satisfying my passion. That is all. And I hope there is some lessons in there to sort of go from it for you.
No, man, I think it's fascinating because, see, I think the key points that you again just, and is what I walk away with in this, right, is one, passion, of course, right? That is, everybody kind of understands that, right? But converting passion into relevant action to the relevant outcomes, right? That requires focus. And like you said, it's not like people don't have the skill sets to do what you have to do to start small, but the lack of clarity of thought and the supporting action, right? Of what, limiting your actions and focus to only those things that is required at that time. I think that makes a difference.
Exactly. And you know, in using that golf terminology, there's a beautiful saying in golf terminology. Okay. In fact, just today one golfer was telling me. So in golf, it seems it is not about how good your good balls are or good shots are. It is about managing how bad your bad shots are. You know, if your bad shots are not very bad, then overall your game will be very good. Likewise, no, it is not in the initial execution phase. It is not about the skill sets that you're going to use to sort of skill sets that you're not going to be used, that you are thinking, man, how do I use those skill sets into this one? The focus should not be about skill set that you're not going to use in the first part. The focus is to figure out which skill set I'm going to use and just use that skill set. Forget about the other skill sets that you definitely have, but you're not using it, but don't force fit those skill sets into the initial part of the equation. That's kind of the, you know.
Right. So what you're saying is even the approach to doing it, try to focus on what is required and bring that out rather than trying to answer the question, what is not required and not focus on.
Exactly. Right? Something like that. You're right. You're right.
So, no, that's great. It's wonderful, Bala. I mean, I think, and I think this is something, nothing to do with separating day-to-day work also. We all struggle. We have whatever, 10, 12 hours, we all spend time. And some days we feel we accomplish a lot. Some days we don't. And I'm sure this fundamental thing of not being able to focus on what is required to get that done sometimes is a factor that we can take as a lesson or a thought process, if you may, and practice that, right? So no, I know we are kind of having a fascinating conversation. I did say that I'm going to have two guests, but so far, like always, Bala has been dominating the discussion, right? Right. But again, having known Bala for all these years, I can take these liberties in public forum with him. But having said that, now it's time for us to invite a more fascinating and an interesting guest who is going to join us now. Hey, Renu.
Hi, GV. How are you?
Good. Very, very nice to see you in your bright dress, and I'm sure we are going to have a lot of fun tomorrow, enjoying the season we all have had. Thank you for running a day before and the thing that you do for this organization, and I'm sure the household, and keeping the community amazing as well, right? So Renu, I said, tell me a bit about your journey, and more importantly, your journey with Bala. And this is your chance, Renu, for telling whatever you want to tell. And Bala cannot react because he is on camera.
I'm like, oh my God, this is my golden goose. So actually, so sad. This is a wonderful opportunity for me, but I wish I could say something different than this. But the person I met the very first day, I think it was in July 1987, is the same person that he is now. So he hasn't changed, and I would not want to see him differently. So if you talk about the journey, I would say that we've continued to be friends. We became friends. We continue to be friends. We are like chalk and cheese. I'm hypoactive. He's hyperactive. It's like he'll go around the house 154 miles per hour. I would not have moved even an inch. So that's how it goes. He was terrified of dogs, and I was crazy of animals of any sort. So, but yes, we managed both of it, and we're doing perfect. I would say we thrive with the differences that we have.
Amazing response. As I said, I mean, I have met you guys for the first time just before you're going to get married as well. I mean, in Besanagar Beach with, I still have a picture of us, all of us with one of the dogs at that time. So, but again, it's been a fascinating journey for you all. And as I say, like most people listening to this, I'm a big fan of Sachin Tendulkar, right? And for all the reasons what he has done. But to me, I'm a bigger fan of Anjali Tendulkar, even for Sachin Tendulkar, for having a chance to be a Sachin Tendulkar, right? So again, I don't know her very well, but I was saying just mentally what she had to give up and what she had to choose to do or not to do to give him that opportunity, right? So, but in your case, I know, Renu, that you have been such an integral part of what we are all doing together here in terms of the Runners High with Bala. But you also have your own passions and you drive that forward as well. So tell me a bit about how do you get to straddle this?
Okay, so I am a very independent person and I've always been. And Balaji, even from marriage, he's cultivated that. He's led. So I believe very strongly in something. If you see, I always say that live and let live. Do not try to control someone and do not get controlled also. So that's the way I go. So if I want something done, I get it done, irrespective of what comes my way. And he wants something done, he gets it done. So we go that way. And as having straddling it, I think both of us, found that this is a common spot. When I first met him, I've always known him as a person who helps others and so on and so forth. And then he went to college and then later he proposed and all that. So I had, in my own mind, I had to give this test to him. So once I was getting into the bus and it was crowded and it's like your courting period and your boyfriend is like, oh my God, you're the best thing in the world and all that stuff. So there are people around you and there's this old woman who was also going. So I purposely wanted to see, I just held myself back and I said, let me see, would he go? He was behind me, he was helping me because it was really crowded. Would he help me or would he help that woman? I don't think even he knows of this. So instantly he gravitated towards and helped her first. And I was like, okay, I'm making the right choice. Couple of tests like this, I don't think he remembers, but yeah, I mean, he knows, but I did put them forward and check what would his reaction be. And I felt we aligned there. It is very important that you do not look at just your house, your people, your everything. You got to help someone else. You got to look for someone else. And I'm not the kind of person who's capable of herding a group, or I'm more a follower, but I do my bit of helping or whatever that gives me happiness in my own way with small numbers. But somebody has to do it in a large number. And if he can do it, well and good. That's again my goal, my aim, and he's taking it forward. I just have to give a little bit of a push.
Beautiful. That's wonderful. So while you say that you are chalk and cheese, but there is so much of alignment in your thought process fundamentally, right? That's kind of how I see this, right? I know in terms of when it comes to certain topics, that's what I said, right? It's certain areas where you are able to gravitate and certain areas you still have the opportunity to be independent and drive.
You know what? I think I should talk more with you because now I'm finding a lot of common traits. I didn't know.
But one thing you said about the fact that he has not changed at all for all these 20 plus years, right? I think that has zero credit for Bala, but all the credit to you to give him the opportunity to be able to not to change and be himself, I would say, right? What do you think, Bala?
No, 100% agree. I think I've told this in other forums too. 1000% agree. Yeah? And she's right. Many of from school friends, you were there as a school friend. I don't think so there will be much difference. My college friends and everybody, and even my own relatives, my mom says the same thing. And the reason why that thing, for saying anything, like, when a marriage is a big responsibility for both the husband and the wife. So typically when a change happens, it's because of a huge responsibility that has come in. A lot more things need to be done by both the man and the women in a marriage, like, parents, and when you become a father and mother and all that. So to maintain the same sort of lifestyle, that means somebody is taking a little bit more load for a normal thing my husband has to do, say, internally, right? And I think she has definitely done that, right? And my role has also been a highly travel role. So I'm not at home. And then whatever time I'm at home, I am doing other things as well. Then that just shows that there has been, something has to give somewhere. And that is basically she's been a single parent for many, many years when I was in work. But when I'm back also, no, she allows me, or when I say she allows me, she doesn't get pissed off that I go out with my friends for a beer. That doesn't mean that she'll say, what the hell, you were there out for 10 days, you came and you went for a beer. She could have always said that, but she is like, she has not said that. Like, say 5 times I do, only once she will say that. 4 times she'll be allowing me to.
So Bala, that's fascinating, right? You said something has to give somewhere. It's very clear who is giving.
Yeah. No, I have to give. I have to accept. And I thank.
No, I'm just pulling your leg, right? I think this is happening in each one of our lives in some form, but the point is, the key thing is about doing more for others as well beyond what you think is required. I think that's what I'm kind of learning as a key thing, right?
Yeah.
But
One
great.
thing I want to say on that, GV, I think she made a choice, even though she might not verbalize it, but as I see her, no, she made a choice that having a more sort of, call it the happier Bala, is a better deal than having someone who is sort of cut out some of the things that has made him happy, because now that he's married or now that he's a father, and kind of doing some other kind of work that is not that I won't be happy, I'll be happy, but may not be as happy as what it was before. So I think she made the choice and said, okay, let me kind of get that side of Bala more than the second part. I think that maybe, is that true?
Actually, when does a marriage or if I'm allowed to say this, when does a marriage go sour or go down south? When what you see changes over the period of time, right? So you say, this is not what I married into. This is not, when that doesn't change, when person doesn't change, then there is nothing that you can be. So if I am going to stop him from doing any of those things, then I'm trying to change him actually. So what's the point? I wouldn't want that. That's not what I want. I just want him to be himself.
Yeah.
And and I like single parenting.
Okay, but just continuing, Renu, just to kind of give a context, I know I kind of pulled you in the middle of the conversation. So we're just kind of coming back and talking a bit about some characteristics of good human beings, which is a broader goal that we have for the Runners High with Bala as a mission, right? We touched upon getting things done. We touched upon leadership, which is a new Bala talks very passionately about. There's another thing I just want you to weigh in on, and of course, I'll get Bala's inputs as well, right? So as we go through this thing about trying to do more, trying to help, trying to get things done for our family and so on, there's always a kind of a tiff between how contented you are versus how ambitious you are. Contentment versus ambition, right? That's a difficult balance to do. Enough people believe that if you're contented, you're not going to achieve more because you're not trying hard enough. And many of the people who go to the ambitious spectrum feel that, I need to be ambitious to be able to move forward, right? So any perspective in your experience of working and living and in your own, pursuing your own interests, how do you deal with that?
So, okay, so just a small rewind. I'm born to extremely, successful parents. Both my parents were pioneers in their field at that times, and both of them were extremely successful. So I grew up seeing two successful parents, but I still remember the one time somebody asked me, they ask kids, I'm 6 years old, and they asked me, what do you want to be, a great scientist like your dad or want to be a doctor like your mom? So I looked at her, I believe, and I said, I want to be happy like I'm now always. So that is what I wanted to be, and that is how I've continued to be. And my parents are very responsible for keeping it that way. There was no pressure on me, nothing at all wanting. So they brought it down back to that fact. What makes you happy, you do and keep it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be this or that. And I'm happy doing these kind of things, what I'm doing right now. Yes, I like to work and I'm doing my work. I would love to spend more time at work at times, but that's not because of Balaji or because of the children. It is because of right now my dad is there and I'm looking after him, which is also a pleasure because I have the opportunity to serve him and look after him. I feel that is great. Many people don't have that right now. Unfortunately, things are like so. So I believe that happiness is something that you should really see and figure out. You can be happy about anything and everything in life. It's up to you, basically. If you decide to be sad, you can be sad about everything. So it's up to you again. And I guess I've always been a happy person. So
yes,
continues that way.
I've known you even when we were in the Swiss Alps. There were days you were struggling, but you were always happy, right? So, and we had a great company there and amazing fun.
Thank you.
So again, love it, right? A great perspective. See, it comes to the mind and the thought that you have, and also whatever the path you take, right, and the choices you make, but having clarity towards what is the definition helps you is kind of what I'm hearing and pursuing that.
Yeah. So there are only two things that even now when my children say, I mean, like yesterday, just to show how horrible I am with my children and their studies, they were talking couple of days, I mean, not yesterday, couple of this beginning of this year, they were talking about AP and advanced proficiency and all that stuff. And I went up to Dia and said, they have things like AP and all now happening in schools. They have to study. She looked at me and said, I also had it. I said, oh, when you had it, you were always there? She said, I was always an honest student. Practically no idea what's happening in my daughter's life at that point, because I was very strong and I was very happy and focusing on the fact of how am I building this child's character, how she is going to be as a person. And that is exactly, those are the two things I would not compromise on. For Dia and Disha, I don't care what they do in their studies, but character-wise, they have to be kind. Do you know what Disha did? I think I pushed her a little too much. On one of the marathons, she came after 4 hours. We were waiting. She's not finished, and I was worried. I came back, I asked her what happened. She said there were people who had put their cups, thrown the cups away. So I was helping them clean it all up, and she was 9 years old. She didn't get the marathon in the record time, but I got my wish. I was happy.
I think these are priceless and very difficult to cultivate, right? No, it's amazing. Great to hear that. Bala, your thoughts on contentment versus ambition?
Yeah, so so I see this as a continuum, GB. Happiness is available on both sides, in my mind. Happiness can be achieved when you're content with what you have. Happiness can be achieved when you're ambitious and achieve what your ambitions are. I feel happiness are there on both sides. And
yeah, by the way, happiness was the fourth trait I was going to talk about, Bala. Sorry to interrupt, but that's fine. We continue with the conversation. Yeah.
What is happiness is the fourth trait you talked about?
I said happiness was the fourth trait I was going to talk about, but again, we can continue with this. Absolutely.
Correct. No, why I was saying that is because, content versus ambition, when you are young, if you are too contented with what you have, you will never grow. You got to have something in front that is beyond your reach and shoot for it. When you're young means I'm saying when you're in college, and then you got to at least type A personalities, like you are a business student as well. I identify myself with that group very much, like where, I'm not, I don't get into a business school and say, I'm happy and contented that I got into a good business school and I'm just letting it go. I come into business school and I say that I want to get the best of what the business school offers. That's why I came into business school. I didn't come into business school to just be sitting on the laurels. I'm sure you did the same with every other top schools and stuff you went to. So I was ambitious. And if I was not ambitious at that point, I'm asking myself, would I have been just like, say, that happy thing? Would I be happy being content at that time? I don't think so. Likewise, once I got into a good firm or a good company and all that, I was ambitious to become a director, a vice president, If I wasn't ambitious of becoming a vice president, then what was there in my job? I can't be just, I need something to push me to become better of what I am so that I can get to something. So if you think from that in a running concept also, right? I want people to be ambitious to go from half marathon to full marathon. I want them to be ambitious. I don't want them to be contented with just 5Ks and 10Ks. The idea here is so that it can get the best form of yourself, best output of yourself. This is on the ambition side, but the ambition should not be such that it changes your humanity, that you become so competitive that you don't help others or you don't enjoy the moment. I want you to be, if I can, the sweet spot for me is you need to be ambitious, but you got to enjoy what you have right now. Otherwise, you will never reach the spot where you need to be. That's where I feel being. So, given a choice today, if I given a choice, would you be content with what you have? And have no ambition versus will you be? I would say that if you take out the ambition out of me right now, I will become very sad right now. But because there is an ambition, I also know that I need to enjoy today, and I try my best to enjoy today, kind of a thing.
If you ask, if you take the ambition out and say, am I completely satisfied with what I have today? Perfectly, completely content, and I'm very, very happy.
Yeah, great. No, I think it's perspective, and I think what I am again learning and talking to a few people is these two don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Correct.
Right. So I think many times we all think about it, and I think that again coming back to the good human beings, right? They find a way to balance this. Correct. Right. Of you contented. So in general, you are happy, you are helping others, but still you are not sitting on your laurels, but you still want to push forward and have goals and go and achieve them, right? So I think they don't have to be mutually exclusive, while it is many times framed as this versus that, right? Need not be the case always, is kind of what I hear. Yeah, and again, my final topic was actually happiness. And again, that's that thing that everyone is trying to figure out how to, right? So the famous quote around this is, happiness is a choice, right? I'm sure many people believe in it, and many people get very irritated by it, right? Because many people feel it's a feeling, right? And it's not something that you can really control. So I know you kind of mentioned some of that in your perspective, but anything that you would like to add on that? Renu, let's start with you. Yeah.
Okay, so a feeling is something which comes in as soon as you react to it. That's your particular nature. But how you handle that feeling and change it is up to you. So you can feel sad momentarily, and then you can dig a hole and sit there and keep feeling sad. Or you can just think about how many things are working for you and how many things, and become happy. If one thing goes down and you're going to sit there, there are 1,000 things which are going good and well for you. I think you should probably focus on that. I think happiness is a choice. Feelings come, they go.
Yeah. For me,
Interesting.
the framework for happiness is a choice. People should not think of happiness as a choice as a, choose the correct answer. Okay, happiness, I will remain happy, I will not be happy, and then I choose to be happy. If people think of that like that, then it becomes, they think, man, it's not a choice, man. Happiness doesn't come like that. I don't choose to be happy. Like, people who disagree with that framework, I feel I would like to have a deep, next level conversation on that. Why there is a reason why happiness is a choice. Because I believe for happiness, for any human being to achieve happiness, two things need to happen. One is you need to beat or meet your expectation for any condition. That is when like say you want something in life or something in that day, and whatever happened that day met your expectation or went above your expectation, then you feel satisfied or there is a happiness there. Now, meeting and beating expectation is not a choice, but the choice is where your expectation is. That is a choice. If let's say you go on a vacation, you have a choice to make that. I want to have the most pristine customer service, the greatest weather, the most beautiful pictures, the happiest kids. And when I wake up in the morning, my husband smiles at me and gives me breakfast. This is the sort of my definition of a happy vacation. That choice you have made. Okay, nobody has made, you have made. Now, against this choice, anything that doesn't meet this expectation, boom, it doesn't meet your expectation, and hence it doesn't become happy. And then you start focusing on, man, what kind of an idiotic customer service was that? Why are the kids constantly crying? Why are they not getting up? 5 things we had to go today, only 3 things we did today. The remaining 2 things, because the family was late getting up in the morning, kids were crying, GV, you didn't help me clean the kids, and Bala, you went for a run instead of being with me. These are all the manifestations of a very high expectation that you made a choice. So that's why I'm saying happiness is a choice, where you got to get into the mindset where what is my definition of a vacation. Definition of a vacation for me is getting out of my current setup, seeing something in a different place, and just being free. That is my sort of expectation that I made. Because of the choice that I made on expectation, happiness becomes a choice for me, because I can go to any place and have a blast. Even if I didn't go and meet the 1 out of 5 only I did, I still have a blast. That is my first point on that happiness construct, why happiness is a choice. The second one, GV, on the happiness is a choice construct is, you want to enjoy the present, or you want to choose to plan for the future. What are you trying to do? Most of the times people don't make the choice to be happy is because they are constantly planning for the future. They're constantly planning for the future. Like today you had 3 friends coming to your house, you're going to have a nice party. Okay. At that exact moment, the folks who cannot make a choice for being happy are thinking about cleaning their house. Next day morning is Sunday. I have to take my kids for a music class. So man, maybe I should go to sleep at 10 o'clock. Man, you're meeting your childhood friend for after 5 years. Who the hell cares about your, teacher, students, party class tomorrow? We'll figure it out tomorrow. We'll sleep less. That's all, no? You know what I mean? So that becomes a choice. Instead of focusing on the current, you made a choice to focus on the future. That attitude remains with this personality trait always thinking about the future, always planning of the future, and as a result, never being happy. Those are the 2 points. I rest my case of why happiness is a choice.
Fabulous. And I'm sure we can talk for hours on this topic. And this is probably the the topic with most opinions. I'm sure everybody has an opinion on this one, right? But I mean, I think, again, it's personally, again, I do believe it's a choice. And I think it was nice, Bala, to kind of elicit the point of what element of the choice drives that, right? In terms of the expectations, right? And it's not like you just say, okay, today, right now, I'm going to switch it on and switch it off kind of a scenario, right? And it obviously drives with some feeling. And I think, Renu, thanks for pointing out the fact that feeling comes and goes, but how you handle it and how you deal with it and the choice you make immaterial of what the feeling is, that ultimately drives how you're happy, right? That's kind of.
And I married an Energizer bunny on steroids, and it remains the same. You know that Energizer
Yes.
bunny which keeps going on what is it, Duracell?
Yeah, Duracell.
Yeah, but Renu, you won't believe that people would like to extract that chemical or whatever it is, put it in tablets and give it to a few other people, right? To have energy, right? Instead of someone like me who is not moving around and doing too much, right?
That's why.
But anyway, I think fascinating.
GV, that's why you did a 1 hour 56
Bala.
minutes. That's why you did a 1 hour 56 minutes half marathon. The guy who doesn't move around.
So now I got acknowledgement that at least on the trail I'm fast enough. but it stops right there. Right? But beautiful, right? See, I think, Bala, one thing I want to kind of specifically ask you, again, this I think is unique in your experience, is your experience of being on ships, right? So which most of us listening to this have not had, right? And I know you from school, but I know those 5-10 years you are there, right? And the kind of responsibilities you have, the scenarios are very different from what we all deal with our day-to-day work. Can you highlight a few of some experiences there, which kind of aligns to these few points that we talked about, which shaped your personality?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, GV. So there are a few transferable skills that I had garnered from my 10 years at ship on the sea, right? One is there is no choice of inaction on the ship. Now, what I mean by that is a ship has to sail out of a port in another 12 hours, and you are starting a maintenance work, okay, on a main engine. Now, you have to fix the main engine before the ship sails off, because otherwise the ship is not going to sail out of the port, right? So when you start the work on a repair, for instance, and let's say something went bad, it didn't go as per expectation when you did the maintenance work. You know, in land, let's say you continue to work for 8 hours now, or 10 hours now, you're exhausted. What you would say is, you know what? Let's just go home. Let's just have a nice sleep and come back. And then next day morning, let's attack it fresh, you know. That choice is not available on a ship. It doesn't matter whether you are on for 25 hours, 28 hours, 30 hours. It doesn't matter. You got to make that engine ready. Otherwise, hell will break loose in terms of millions of dollars of claim. All kinds of things will happen. So in a ship, what happens is when you pick up a job, it doesn't matter. Your discomfort doesn't matter, you know, or your conditions doesn't matter. You got to take it to the finish line, period. If you think about it, our half marathon, full marathon philosophy is also somewhat similar. Some of the times when I say it doesn't matter, it's snowing, raining. You have been given a long run of 10 miles, means you got to finish the long run of 10 miles. Unless you have a fracture that you cannot run or some other mega issues, that's a job at hand. You got to finish the job at hand. So that thing has really helped me shape my sort of approach to projects or anything on land, so to speak, GV. The second one, which is very interesting, and I always tell my assistants, is that at ship, let's say you do a great job, okay? Fantastically, you pick up something and you do an amazing job as a chief engineer. nobody is going to come and tell you, Bala, what a fantastic job. Well done, well done. Great job. Here is a bonus of $10,000. Nothing like that exists on board the ship. That means if you do a great job, that means that is par for the course. That means the ship is not, your ship is moving forward. It is not going down into the water. But if you screw up once, the whole world will know. So the paradigm of feedback of your good work is nobody gives you pain. That means that is the greatest thing that you have achieved by doing a great work. And if you do any mess up, then it is the negativity is like the other way around. So you're always living in not too much of appreciation from everybody, but still having the inside drive to do the best that you can for a particular job. Now that helped me a lot, GV, when I came to land, let's say, especially working like Google or McKinsey. When you did a great job, then like 18 people came and said, wow, Bala, thank you for going above and beyond and do an amazing job. Here is your cash bonus or something. I'm like, wow, something like this also possible in life where, some instant gratification. I wasn't used to instant gratification like that. But that helped me a lot in keeping up a positive mindset. Even when, even when things were bad, you still try to hold a positive mindset that, something great is going to come out of that type of a thing. That helped me a lot. I feel these two traits helped me a lot in executing and, just being a sort of realizing my dreams just alone, even when things are against you.
Sure. No, amazing. I think that's very unique in terms of your experience. And I think that's absolutely true, right? The point you made about not getting beaten up is equivalent appreciation, right? So so the other businesses, like say, it's the guys, there's a guy, which again, I'm in my job, I wrote this guy's responsibility was working for ExxonMobil, 10,000 miles of pipeline they have in the US, right? And, or whatever and his job is to maintain them and make sure that it's running, nothing is going bad. So I happened to interview him for my business reasons, work reasons. I said, how do you measure success in your job? He said, if I don't have an incident and if I don't go behind bars in a given year, that's success for me.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly what he
So for him, yeah. So it's fascinating, kind of a parallel. Yeah, Renu, please go ahead with your view.
So just to say this, we went on an RV vacation where every day something was breaking down. So Balaji would get up in the morning and say, yes, let me see what problem I can solve today. That was his way of having fun. If we can solve a problem that day, then that's it. We had fun.
Right. I think, like you said, attitude to deal with situations solves more than 50% of the problem, right? In terms of, like you say, if you see it as a problem, then it becomes a problem. And I think, again, it's not about coming up with ideas or preaching or whatever. I think these experiences that you share, again, to me, brings out the fundamental point of these amazing human beings we feel that we want to create a network of. These becomes a fundamental building blocks of their character, if you may. And you talked a lot about the building character part of it, right? And so, again, I think we can go on for hours. Probably we spend more than an hour talking. I can't even realize that we spent the hour. But it's been a fascinating conversation with Bala, Renu, one of my favorite people. And I will say, yeah, it's amazing, right? In terms of what you are doing. And I would say again, Renu, all credit to you for being the pillar of strength for RSWB to happen. And Bala, some credit to you for having the opportunity and pursuing your passion. But jokes apart, I think the impact you are starting to have is great. And I wish every success and scaling of what we are doing here to the goal that you have of 1,000 and much more. Right. But thank you for taking the time. And it's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, JV, for thinking about doing this. I mean, never thought it'd be doing this for 5 seasons now, this podcast. Never had that idea that, I should be talking about these things as well. Honestly, I've not talked about this to anybody in this formal sort of a way. And beautiful sort of questions. You are a natural. I know you are a natural podcaster as a guest. now I feel you are a natural podcaster as a sort of interviewer as well. So I'm going to use your services for season 6.
Oh, sure. Anytime, Bala. I have big shoes to fill in, right, in terms of trying to even compare. But again, like we said, I choose not to compare and have fun, right? But great. It was wonderful talking to you guys. Let's go enjoy the SOU tomorrow,
Yes.
and then get some break and get ready for season 6. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
See you all, runners. Thank you, and see you all in season 6.
Hey, Bala, Renu. It has been such a fascinating conversation. I know we can go on forever. Probably we've been speaking for more than an hour right now. I think it's probably time to summarize and bring home the podcast. So first of all, thanks for making the time. My goal was to try and uncover a bit more of Bala and Renu, the real people. Hopefully we achieved some of that in this, getting to know you better. The good news is that you guys are normal people, of course, doing extraordinary things, dealing with the same set of typical challenges we all face in our day-to-day life as husband and wife. But interestingly, Bala probably found a spark and sowed the seeds of helping, starting with kids and others, using running as a medium. And given Renu's shared belief of helping others, that seed is now blossoming into a plant and a flower, and hopefully into a tree very soon. Right? Thank you for that. And of course, you have this amazing, I would say, mission of creating a tight network of more than 1,000 really good human beings. And to achieve that, we talked about few generic characteristics of likely characteristics of these good human beings, starting from leadership. So I think it was very nice to hear the points around leading from the front or leading from the back or leading from the middle in terms of different leadership styles. And the leading from the middle, that you are very much a part of the team, living and breathing and empathizing with them, but also have the ability to lead from the front or from the back. That's an interesting thought, I felt. The next thing we talked about was about getting things done, which keeps these people focused and execute well. And I think the concept of using the specific skill sets required for the task at hand and not getting confused by trying to use too many things to solve a particular situation, right? And I think that focus and that ability to pick the right skills, I think, was an interesting thought. And also your experience in your marine background of really not having a choice not to get something done in a time frame. I'm sure that has shaped you, Bala, and I think it's a great analogy of how you can focus better. And also not looking for kudos or not getting kudos for a job well done, and keep marching and going ahead. And I'm sure at some point, the body of work you have done becomes very obvious to everybody. Then we talked about this whole contentment versus ambition continuum, and where you can be and how mutually exclusive they could be. And I think the consensus here clearly was that they are not mutually exclusive. Ambition is important to drive and achieve more things, while you are contented with what you have achieved, right? And so where you are not in this win at all costs kind of a model, it doesn't change you as a person. I think Renu had some very interesting points there about the importance of character over achievement, right? And I think that plays well, and that's a nice thought to reflect on and see how that can be adopted in the day-to-day life. And finally, we talked about the million-dollar question in terms of happiness is a choice, and how do you kind of deal with that or move towards that. And clearly there, the consensus is that it is a choice. And Renu had this interesting experience about helping others, leading to a lot of happiness and not being focused on yourself. And Bala, I think your perspective on, yes, it's a choice. The choice is not to be happy or not to be happy, but it's more about how you set your expectations more realistically so that you are able to meet or beat them and find happiness. And of course, once you are happy, you are able to influence your environment and make more people around you happy. which is very much what you guys are doing. I mean, I think we should write a blog on this, Bala, right? It's a fascinating conversation. But more importantly, I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to talk to you guys about this and also be a part of this amazing journey that you are after to create this network of 1,000 amazing individuals or human beings. So more power to both of you and to Runners High with Bala, and looking forward to many, many, many more seasons together and have an impact on much more than 1,000 human beings. Thank you.